It is week 10. This is Shoot the Gap. I am Nate Markham. That is Jorge B. Edwards. Let's get you ready for all the IDP action. Let's go. What is up? What is up? What is up? Yes, week 10. We're in double-digit weeks of the fantasy season. I think we've said this numerous times now, Jorge. Yep. We want the drafts in slow drafts to move faster. Hurry up. Make your pick. Let's go. Season's never going to start soon enough. And then you blink, and it's week 10, and we're talking IDP. This is Shoot the Gap, the IDP podcast for Fantasy and Frames. Jorge, how are you, buddy?
Man, I'm doing all right. Whether it's IDP or offense, would you say, Nate, that this has probably been the most difficult fantasy football season a lot of people have had in recent years, just because of injuries just mounting up and really testing your knowledge of who to go after on waivers? I mean, I know we keep it strictly IDP talk here, but it has been a thing. And people are reaching out left and right. Like, how do we compensate for this? Like, who do we start here or there? And it's great for us, here at Fantasy and Frames, being able to provide helpful information to help you all win each week. But it's something. There's something about 2023 that's just been challenging overall.
Yeah, I think that as more information is spread around and it's more digestible and accessible, I feel like there's more pressure mounting. Like with Twitter, immediately, as soon as someone farts and hurts their back, you better be on the Twitter or X telling people, hey, this guy's the next person up if his back hurts, or whatever the case may be. And I do feel that there's a little bit of added pressure as a result. But you know what? You know what helps take pressure off people? And actually, before I start there, that's actually one of the quotes that I love is there's a difference between, being nervous and feeling pressure. And I'm going to completely not get credit to the individual who said it. It was a coach. Oh, okay. Peyton Manning was talking about it, actually, I believe, on Smartless about where the difference between pressure and nerves. Like, you're supposed to be nervous. That's normal. That means you care. Right. But to feel pressure means you're in a spot that you haven't been before. And that's where preparation helps prevent pressure, if you will. And so if you want to not feel pressure in the fantasy season, jump over to fantasyandframes.com. You can read all the IDP articles that we put out. That'll help take some of the pressure off. You can check out Dynasty 365. You can check out Fourth and Frames. You can watch this Shoot the Gap show, the Fantasy and Frames waiver show on Tuesdays. You can watch the mailbag show on Thursdays. And if you haven't gotten enough preparation to prevent pressure, you can watch the Fantasy and Frames pregame show on Sunday mornings from 9 to 12. And if you haven't gotten enough then, I don't know what else to tell you to do, because that is about as damn near much content as you can digest, take in. It's a buffet of beautiful fantasy content. That is, that's where we're at, right?
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, and like one of those high quality buffets, not like your average on the street,
Oh yeah. Oh no, yeah, we're the good Vegas buffet that offers crab legs and the lobster and all the good salad, or they have good Cajun cuisine, as Rougarou would want. Something delicious there. Now, what it's not like is the Chinese buffet that we've all been to, where they have the American, the American section, that is the pizza and whatnot. They've got the regular Chinese, your Beijing beef, yada, yada, yada. And then they got the Chinese section, which is all in their actual, written Chinese language.
You don't know what you're having? Yeah.
Not a clue. I know what duck feet might look like, and I'm not going to try it. Don't care how much you jazz it up. I'm out. Can't do that.
Then you're lucky if you have the spots that have the actual plexiglass sneeze guard. And then when you walk into the situations that don't have that, now you're just asking for trouble. Yeah.
I don't think I've been to a buffet since COVID, in all fairness, though. and it's a sad state of affairs. I didn't mind them, but either way, you know what else we can do? As we go down up and down the buffet line, we'll take a little piece of news and a little piece of notes, and we'll put it on our plate.
I have to say, you are the king of segues. Like you just,
thank you.
You don't even like pre-plan. It's just like,
Nope. If I had any plans of us talking Chinese buffet, I would have had a lot more examples ready to go. But yeah, I do my best. I do my best. Unfortunately, from best to worst, the worst injury of the week was Cole Holcomb. If you watch that, Keanu Neal finally tackled somebody. Unfortunately, it was Cole Holcomb, and that was gross, bro. Did you see that?
I did not. I looked away from the screen. I was doing something, and then I looked back up, like, oh, Cole Holcomb. And I'm like, oh, what did I miss? And then I heard Al Michaels say, you don't want to watch this. We're not going to show it again. I'm like, okay, well, basically, translation, Jorge's staying off of social media so he doesn't see somebody like tweet it out. And I'm just like, nah. You feel for the guy. Right? He like dealt with injuries in Washington, comes over to Pittsburgh, still rehabbing his injury, was having a pretty decent season. And then I just heard it was like some like gruesome knee injury, and it's just, man.
Yeah, it was like the worst case scenario. Like if you imagine, like I've watched plenty of UFC, and when a person does like a front kick to the leg, and you just imagine that's kind of what it was, but from a side. And Ruguru, not to take the appetite away after that conversation, but he says, "Man, give me some gumbo or some jambalaya." Yeah. You know what's similar to gumbo? Gumby, and that's what his leg looked like. It was a flippy flopping, and he is now, unfortunately, and it's not making fun. It is.
No, the segues. The segues. It's just like with the Gumby and the jambalaya. Yeah, it's. I'm sorry.
No. It's jambalaya is delicious, and jump from jambalaya to jumbled brains. Brian Burns is out with a concussion. That was not classy at all. That was actually terrible. That one I had to take back. That one I'm probably going to feel bad about because I don't think we're supposed to make fun of concussions, but
we'll cut that out of the
yeah, don't clip that one. Oh, Craig.
Reference to Craig here. I shot the gap, but I did not shoot the secondary. That is
yes.
Look at you, Craig.
Hey, I am nothing compared to Craig. I bow before Craig, or as your team name is, Daniil before Zod is Daniil before Craig.
That's great. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That's real clever. Not bad at 5-4. Should have. But
ever since we did that trade, I have been winning every matchup since then, climbing back into playoff positioning. So
you have. It's been very good. But yeah, Brian Burns is out with the concussion that was announced today. I gotta tell you, there's really not an edge rusher for Carolina that I'm eager to go out and replace him with. I mean, I'm not missing anybody, am I, that you can think of that you are eager about? I mean, Derek Brown is a defense tackle, but I don't see that as being any type of
and it's not somebody that is designated probably in your leagues as defensive lineman eligible, but he does take snaps at edge every once in a while, and that's Frankie Louvu, but he's your linebacker. You know what I mean? So in terms of like an actual like IDP roster spot to fill in Carolina, sorry, Gross Matos just doesn't do it for me, or anybody else along that defensive line.
That's actually fun. I'm glad you brought up Frankie Louvu, because last week what we saw with his usage is that he was actually utilized as an outside linebacker, like the fewest amount of times really he had been in quite some time, playing more of the inside linebacker. And now without this, without Brian Burns, I wonder if they'll put Louvu on the edge more to create a little bit more pressure. I can't say that that's something that I'm certain of by any means, but it wouldn't shock me with Chicago being so susceptible to the pass rush if they try to stimulate some of that. And maybe that's in Frankie Louvu. Maybe that's, one of the other safeties, because they're probably going to play three safeties more because, well, CJ Henderson is also out. And CJ Henderson, when he left, they did start to play more safety, three safety alignment. We're seeing that a lot and a lot more in the NFL this year, is people, instead of playing dime or when they need a replacement, they end up playing three safeties. And maybe that shows a little in the way of depth amongst the safety position in the NFL. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Chicago, Tremaine Edmunds out yet again. Another opportunity for Jack Sanborn to step right in. It was like he never left, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Again, we talked about him on the pregame show a little bit on Sunday. The IDP darling midseason came on strong, and then you thought, okay, well, Morrow and Sanborn, you don't like it. It's not sexy, but Sanborn, for IDP purposes, is crushing it. Oh, what's that? You want Tremaine Edmunds? Oh, and TJ Edwards? Well, there goes his value. Well, his value is back. So we kind of saw him into a majority of snaps on first, second, and third down. So if you have him, you're feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, and they, and with them playing zone and man kind of back, enough of each, I think that really does help his floor even more so. And I think I told you the story about dropping Sanborn, unfortunately, in the league that had to make a roster move, and he was the casualty 2 weeks ago. That was dumb. So, needless to say, any moves I make, I'm sure we'll see the ancillary effects from that. Here's something that I'm not 100%. I need to follow along more. Sam Hubbard didn't practice today. It's an ankle injury. He was one of 3 players for the Bengals that didn't practice. Reports are vague, to say the least. But if Sam Hubbard doesn't play last week, it's probably Cam Sample. But here's an intriguing name. What about Myles Murphy? Myles Murphy didn't play but 10 snaps last week, but he had a 30, let's see what it was so I don't butcher it completely. But I want to say it was like a 30% pressure rate and a 37.5% win rate and a 25% pressure rate. Granted, 17% of the snaps. Not a huge sample size, but if we're talking about sample size versus sample, I would rather have the small sample size of Myles Murphy going forward than I would of Cam Sample, just another, guy, jag, as they say.
Right. And so, you watch, some of the assessments coming out of college this year and going, one of the things that the Bengals liked about him was that he excelled both at pass rushing as well as in run support. So given that dual skill set there and athletic ability, I would be shocked, if he doesn't get more playing time and going forward, even with, Hubbard coming. If he starts balling out, it's going to be a 3-person rotation. It's going to be Hendrickson, I believe, and then a combo of Murphy and Hubbard. So I'm excited to see what he does, but wait and see for me for IDP. But it's really going to come down to looking at the snap percentages next week and getting a better idea of how to read the terrain there.
Yeah, exactly. And against Houston, I mean, if they throw the ball or drop back to pass 50 plus times like they pretty much have been the last couple of weeks, it's probably a pin your ears back approach. And I like to see what we have with Myles Murphy. But let's also not chalk Sam Hubbard to being out quite yet because the news hasn't got to that point. Kind of like with Terrell Bernard. Another concussion situation, needs to clear concussion protocol. If he doesn't do so, is this another opportunity for, say, Dorian Williams to jump back in and see some snaps?
Well, we saw on Sunday Night Football, I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and I'm like, they're going through the defensive player introductions, and Dorian Williams was the starter heading into last week, which I thought was very interesting. And so technically, you look at total defensive snap share, Dorian Williams 44.3, Bernard 42.9. So technically he won, right?
Right, exactly.
But then, and Bernard lost obviously because of the concussion injury. So it is an opportunity, but outside of Tyrell Dodson, I'm not really feeling any other Buffalo linebacker as far as a option is concerned right now.
Yeah, and that's the way I feel too. I'm not gonna go ham for Dorian Williams. Going ham is a slang term, in case you were wondering. It's not like a actual ham. It is I think it's hard ass motherfucker or something like that. I'm not quite sure.
Speaking of ham, and the Thanksgiving holiday coming around the corner, Did you finally watch, and I know I'm getting slightly sidetracked, did you finally watch Preston Evans take a sweet potato pie to the face from this past Sunday?
I did. I was wondering what kind of pie it was. I wasn't sure if it was sweet potato or pumpkin, but he went all in. I gotta say, and it hung. It had some grip to it. It was like it's thick. It's thick with it. It's stuck there, and I bet that poor beard is still got some sweet potato pie in there. That I can't wait. We will get one going for sure. Misery loves company. So of course, Craig knows that I am miserable when it comes to the whole Jack Sanborn drop. So he's comforting and letting me know that I will pop this up here. I'm not alone with the bad drop luck or bad luck drops, or however you want to call it. He dropped Dalton Kincaid in the Kings Classic due to buys and needing to add right before Knox got hurt. Yep. I wish I had picked up Dalton Kincaid when you dropped him. I did not. I probably picked up some stupid ass that didn't do me any good because I'm trying. That's a tough league, I got to tell you. And I'm thrilled to be in it with Craig. I wish him all the luck in the world that he drops someone else that I can pick up and use. I will say, speaking of players on my team that I can't use, Quay Walker. Hey, hooray, he's out. He didn't practice again with the groin injury. So Quay Walker being out could lead to some other roles that may need to be discussed in a little bit, a la Zaire Franklin, who again did not practice today. Some of these, again, it's early in the week, hard to say exactly. Knee injury, Zaire Franklin, we saw last week. As a result, some very odd snap share breakdowns, which we will get to as well. In Vegas, Divine Diablo did not practice today with an ankle injury. We saw, in Vegas, another name too. We've seen a lot of who are these guys popping up, here and there. For Vegas, it was Amari Burney. And that was one that, you had to really, really be in the deepest of deep leagues. And I preface that, Jorge, if you saw that in the, the IDP roundup and even a little bit in conversation here is that Amari Burney was going to be the guy that was probably going to play the most snaps next to Robert Spillane, and he did. It was still split. Jalen Smith got his grubby hands in there, 25 snaps. When is Jalen Smith going to go away?
Yeah, I didn't realize he was still an active NFL player, so news to me. Probably news to a lot of people out there, but I digress.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of picking up players, he picked up Bryce Huff and Landon Roberts. Hey, 50% is, you know what? That's a Hall of Fame career in baseball. But you're not graduating from Harvard with a 50, so we'll give you more on that. More on that in a bit. Ruger knows I would never completely shit on his plays, but yeah, Amari Burney stepped in. The same thing could be happening this week. Don't love it, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, and maybe some of the worst news for me in recent trades we talked about earlier, Nakobe Dean is expected to land on the IR. Lisfranc injury, never a good sign. Those Lisfranc injuries just seem to pretty much always preclude IR visits for longer than normal. So then the question remains, who do we trust in Philadelphia? And I believe we will have that conversation as well. In Pittsburgh, Minka Fitzpatrick didn't practice again today, hamstring injury. Well, as we know, I'll be interested to see if Keanu Neal is on the field again, or if the rest of his team just said, beat it after, what's that? I'm drawing a blank. Friendly fire. That's right. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. Thank you.
I thought you were going with the Michael Jackson reference with just beat it, but that,
No, fair assumption. I do make more musical, I would say, comparisons than I do friendly fire war terms, but I like to expand my thesaurus.
Your lexicon of comparisons, I guess. I don't know.
Wow. No, that's good. I like lexicon.
It's a good word, right? I love lexicon. It is. And it's also a good hip hop artist for those who know.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah.
Is that
there we
go? I am out on that.
Just right there, and we weren't even trying. Just
exactly. Like, you know who Blueface is? I do know. Blueface is the rapper that at the LA game had all the strippers in the on the sideline in his suite, and Kelly Stafford, I think is their name, Kelly, Matthew Stafford's wife, got all been out of shape because there's children there and they shouldn't have these girls down to their underwear, bouncing their butts and getting money thrown. They were twerking and they was throwing dollar bills everywhere. And so she got all butt hurt. He attacked her, called her a Karen, told her to mind her business. And I am wondering, will Blueface be there in January when Carrie and I are there? Because if that's the case, our friends at Trophy Smack, if you're listening, you can definitely move me closer to that booth if you would like. I'm sure that's for Carrie, not for me, just so you know. That is how that goes. By the way, also, Jorge, we should probably, obviously, if anybody's utilizing Trophy Smack, because you see you have a couple behind you, I have a couple behind me. Trophy Smack promo code FRAMES will get you 10% off Wall Smack with a minimum purchase of $49. So again, go to trophysmack.com, use promo code FRAMES, FRAMES, and get 10% off your Wall Smack with a minimum purchase of $49. It could go a little faster, so I don't have to try to read that as slowly, but you know, maybe I should memorize that. It is what it is. Last but not least, Blake Cashman didn't practice today. That's kind of intriguing because Houston, Jorge, we saw last week, they were kind of doing a rotation a little bit more. I don't know if that's because Cashman's knee flared up at some point during the game and they took some of the snaps away from him. If they're wanting to get Christian Harris more involved, don't know why they would necessarily want to get Henry Tuatua less involved. But what's your take on that linebacking situation right now?
Yeah, it blows my mind that they decided to play Christian Harris 62% of the time in terms of defensive snap share, and they made Tuatua kind of irrelevant with only 19.7. You figure you would put a little bit more faith in the rookie you just drafted that's been showing more upside than the second-year linebacker that has just not. Part of me wants to think that was just more of a mastery of the defense type of thing, some familiarity with the scheme that they said, hey, Harris, why don't you play more snaps here and kind of compensate for Cashman, because you have to remember before Blake Cashman, there was a time where both Harris was a starter with Denzel Perryman, and there's swapping of in and outs of injuries between Perryman, Cashman, and Harris. So maybe it was just the coach's comfort level with Harris, but I really want to pay attention to the practice reports because Blake Cashman has just been playing lights out, and we saw Perryman, him and Cashman play a majority of snaps on Sunday, and they're both equally, I think, very solid linebackers for your IDP rosters.
Yeah, I wonder also if that's Henry Tuatua who allowed to Cade Otton had he gave up 2 touchdowns in coverage of Cade Otton. If that maybe was a precursor as well, we'll see. What we'll know about Blake Cashman and the rest of that Houston, I'd say, linebacking core is that when you finally do get some answers, it can be maybe a money, or is it simply just a mirage? Yep. Yeah, and there Craig had added on that he Tuatua in coverage has been bad. Thinks D'Amico Ryans is playing linebacker roulette to try and find the right combo, which does happen. It's not good for our fantasy teams because any given week, but it's true that can happen. And so, like I said, that terrible segue into Money and Mirage. I promise I will do better next time. I had to figure something out that was embarrassing, if anything. My segues are becoming more of a mirage, far from money there. But if you're new to the show and new to listening to this, the Money and Mirage segment is where we take a look at some of the polarizing names and or waiver wire pickups, and we determine if that player will be a money play for your fantasy team going forward, or if it's simply a mirage and a 1 week one-off, if you will. And so let's, Ruguru chimes in real quick, and I want to get to that just while we're on Houston. One last time on the Houston linebacking situation is that, he says Perryman seems to be losing time to those other guys. What do we do with them? And what do you do with Denzel Perryman right now, Jorge? Is it, let's say it's a semi-shallow league, not the deepest of deep leagues where you can't afford. Are you holding on to him any longer?
No, probably not. No, I I'd rather shoot for upside plays. And in fact, one player who we'll be talking about during plays and fades is somebody that I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable. He hasn't had the upside per se that Perryman has had, but the consistency has been there, and there's definitely an upward trend going there. So a little tease for later when we get into plays and fades. But yeah, I would, in a shallow league, I would play for more upside and take a flyer on another linebacker.
What a tease! What a tease! And I don't want to tease any of the people in the chat that have questions from an offensive standpoint. Number one, thank you for listening, and I hope that you'll continue. And if you play in IDP leagues, definitely come in with us every Wednesday night. But for the offensive side, obviously hit up any one of us on our DMs. You can find Jorge at Jorge B. Edwards, me at Nate Markham. Get her behind the scenes at FantasyJ77. We'll be more than happy to answer any of your offensive questions. DJ V, the Jordan Addison, Chris Godwin question. Thanks again just for listening. We appreciate that. So let's get the first name and the money in Mirage. And I got to tell you, let's see, 72 hours ago, I'd never heard this person before in my life. That's not a good thing for a person who does a podcast on IDP pretty much every single week for the last 3 years. But his name is Segun Olubi. And that is a linebacker out of the Indianapolis Colts, who prior to this past week had a total of 9 defensive snaps, but yet with Zaire Franklin missing the week, and all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, Shaq Leonard, 3-down roll. We're going to see, this situation here. Let me pull this up because I don't know who he had the 9 snaps against, but I know that it was, man, I'm drawing a blank here. I don't see even the 9 snap. Oh, there it is. 7 against the Rams and 2 against the New Orleans Saints. So let's just be honest. It was nothing.
Yeah. It is mind blowing that he had 100% of snaps on all major downs. I guess we should ask the question: is this a money or Mirage, and what we're seeing with him? I can't say this is money. I'm sorry. I can't say it's money for a player who paid 100% of snaps and only had a tackle efficiency of 5.6%.
Right.
That is ridiculous. Whereas you look at Shaquille Leonard, who only played on first and second down. He was not on the field at third down at all, yet had a tackle efficiency of 25.5%, and had, according to PFF, 10 total tackles. Like, what the hell is going on here? I don't understand. This makes 0 sense at all.
It doesn't make any sense. I know whenever it was after the game, it was, our friend John Macri over at PFF that put it out there, and him and I even had a little chat going back and forth. Like, what did we miss? How many snaps, the 9 snaps he was talking about, and just overall, I don't get it. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if this week, if Zaire Franklin's out, if Shaq Leonard sees 85%, EJ Speed sees 70%, and Luby's back to nothing. I can't recommend that at all. If he plays 100% of the snaps this week, let's say, what if he does that against a New England team that I would love that matchup. I love linebackers going against the Patriots, even though I don't trust that. I don't trust that guy. And I hate to say that guy because that's not a nice thing to say about a person who's played 100% of snaps, but so about him. I don't know enough. So I'm going to pass on it. He's going to be a Mirage play. We're going to step to the next player who, honestly, I got to say, each year I want to buy in more and more that Nicholas Morrow is that guy. Weak side linebacker in Matt Eberflus's system before, I thought was the perfect fit in Chicago. And then now he ends up in Philadelphia, and the pieces start to separate. Nakobe Dean's gone. So now it's like, all right, will it be Nicholas Morrow? Will Zach Cunningham be the primary linebacker? Will they both see enough snaps? Will they play more 3 safety roles and have just one linebacker in? What will Philadelphia do? And that's what I lead to you is it going to be money or Mirage for Nicholas Morrow as even as an LB2 or 3, I guess. Sorry.
I don't even, I can't, for me, I can't. You look at back-to-back weeks, the guy's had 5 tackles, 4 tackles. He's played alongside Cunningham, who's actually been the more efficient tackler. He's been the more productive tackler. 15 tackles back-to-back weeks. His missed tackle rate is below 8. It's 6.7. Morrow's is 20. And it'd be one thing if Morrow, it's just he had a high missed tackle rate, but he was getting volume in terms of a lot of tackles, and he just is, he's fortunate to be bailed out by his tackle volume. He's not getting tackle volume, and with the tackles that he is attempting to make, he's missing 20% of them. So I think he's a Mirage, even with Nakobe Dean out. I really think it's Zach Cunningham or bust here for Philadelphia for the immediate future. And like you were saying with Nakobe Dean's injury, it could be for the rest of the regular season or forever long he's out,
Absolutely. It's not the best injury to have to going forward. I don't know another linebacker on that team that I would trust to eat into snaps, but who knows? I mean, they're on a bye this week, so you don't have to worry about it this week, which is probably made for a bad money or Mirage, considering it's supposed to be for the coming week. But hey, I didn't say I was great at my job.
No, we gotta. I mean, it makes sense to play a couple weeks in advance because, Zach Cunningham has had a really good solo to assist, and so we do have bye weeks after next week, and who's to say that your competitor in your fantasy league didn't drop Zach Cunningham, and had to pick up somebody and replace it because of the bye week this week, and then they're hoping oh, nobody saw that, I could come back and get him, and you could be the one who's like, nah, sucker, I got him now, so you don't have to worry about that, and inadvertently may have helped somebody is where I'm trying to go with that. So
there you go. Inadvertently is fair. And in 2 weeks they play the Chiefs, where you're definitely going to be looking for coverage snaps, and Zach Cunningham has a ton, as does Nicholas Morrow, but Cunningham really is a 100 damn near 100 point lead or 100 snap lead in coverage snaps over Nicholas Morrow. So maybe that's an early jump in when you can type scenario. But yeah, there we go. Jamie Parag, welcome to the chat. He says, yes, my IDP guru is far from that. What question is this? What has he missed so far, Jorge? He's 15 minutes late to the party. Fashionably late, of course.
So what you've missed is that we do a lot of stuff here at Fantasy and Frames, and we do a lot of IDP stuff here. And whether it's Dynasty, in-season, redraft, IDP, you name it, go to our YouTube channel. You can watch all of our video content. But we're going to be putting out more content on TikTok and Instagram and wherever there's a social media platform that has reels. We'll have little snippets from all of our shows put into those reels. And so you can basically find us and listen to all of our stuff wherever you want, basically.
There you go. And obviously just jump back and re-listen if you need at any point, and you can see what you missed, which mostly is me stammering through a bunch of words and names that incoherent at times, and then people like Craig and the rest of the chat probably shake their head behind the computer and go, why do we listen to this moron? But probably listen to it because we talk about Isaiah McDuffie here. Nothing better than old Quay Walker being out. Isaiah McDuffie, who has proven over the years that he is a suitable replacement when needed. Question is just how suitable? Money suitable? Mirage suitable?
If Quay Walker is out this week, I think he's money. In fact, anytime Isaiah McDuffie is on the field, I think he's money. All 3 linebackers the past month have had basically a close to 0 missed tackle rate with high double-digit solo tackle volume. We saw it again, this past week. I wrote about him in the IDP waiver wire. The past 3 games played, he's averaged 9 total tackles. The fantasy points are there. We talk about Fantasy Pros. IDP scoring here. He finished as the LB20 with 14.8 in relief of Quay Walker. And we saw, that he could coexist with Devondre Campbell. So yeah, the tackle efficiency is there. The low missed tackle rate is where you want it to be. It's honestly it's with all three of these linebackers, I'm getting to the point where I'm feeling comfortable. Like any one of the three in any plug and play situation, I can set into my lineup and feel fairly confident that they're going to produce.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, shocking just how consistent on a per snap basis McDuffie's been with everything. I mean, he's even creating pressure when he needs to. He has 3 tackle for losses already. The one quarterback hit's not something I'm going to pay attention to necessarily with that, but we've seen that, especially in matchups where you're going to need a little bit of some splash. He in limited time, he has about roughly a 6% blitz rate, which isn't terrible for a second kind of a backup linebacker. If we're getting super, super deep, that's for sure.
All right.
I think is there anybody else that I missed? Is anybody that you want to talk about in this Money and Mirage?
Okay. So yeah. And I'll do it in like a backwards kind of way. Is what you saw from David Mayo from Washington this week, was that a Money or Mirage performance? Like, are we expecting things to get better? Because it couldn't have gotten much worse.
I don't think so. I think that's been what's precluded him from even being on the field for the most part, as I think they've seen what we saw in practices enough that they said, we don't want to have to play Mayo, but unfortunately the lack of, depth at middle linebacker just says, I think they're more comfortable throwing more safeties out. And that's that seems to be the common trend. But there was nothing about his game that really was impactful from an IDP standpoint. If you look at PFF's grades, his grades weren't terrible. They were all, they were C pluses, 78, 77. So he was there, but nothing about that says that's a person I want to go pick up from IDP.
Okay. Let me throw another one at you.
Okay.
And this one is frustrating because it shouldn't be frustrating, but he gives you frustrating weeks and then you change your opinion about him. Mm-hmm. And then he goes off and he has 2 pick sixes this past week.
Kenny Moore?
Good old Kenny Moore. Is he Money or Mirage going forward as a cornerback in a cornerback specific league, as well as a defensive back and an all-encompassing defensive back setting league?
Well, we've seen that out of Kenny Moore. We've seen Kenny Moore produce at a DB1 level just a few years back. And unfortunately, with the volatility at defensive back, that's what it led to, is this overdrafting of him with the unfortunate situation that he just wasn't put into what I believe is the same type of situation that he's in now, which is he can be a little bit more aggressive, which is weird because it's not like I thought that this, scenario was any better for him defensively. Like he has insulation around him where he can be a little bit more dynamic, but he's getting attacked on the field. He's in I'd say a heavy workload area as far as targets and then even in part of the running game as well. Am I going to start him in my defensive back if I have him? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to put up DB1 overall each week? I think that's kind of a little too crazy. But Ruger had one up there that I want to kind of talk about too, and that's so with Marquese Bell. We're going to get to Marquese Bell in a little bit. We've been talking about him for the past couple of weeks, I think, incrementally. Good news is this: I won't pat myself on the back, but I will maybe just reach my arm back a little bit. I have had him in our Kings Classic IDP league. Now, this will be since week 5. And so, it worked. It paid dividends. I would love to have him get linebacker eligibility in that, which is weird to say. Typically, his availability as a linebacker usually benefits people that have him as a defensive back. but I'm so weak at linebacker in that now. I could just use a healthy body, and that would be one. We'll talk more about him. And then Jamie finally wants to know, with the 15 minutes that he was late, did we talk about one of your guys and one of my guys as well, Boye Mafe, who, Boye, I can't believe he's only owned in 38% of the leagues as well. And that is true. He's had a sack now, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to just guess. I think it's 4 games in a row now.
Has that sack 6 games?
6 games in a row?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
okay.
He's
yes,
led,
you're right.
In week 9, he had a team-leading 60.5% pass rush snap share. Back-to-back weeks with a tackle floor of at least 6 total tackles, sack in the past 6 games. We talked about him in Money Mirage a couple weeks ago. He was in my IDP waiver wire article this week. Finished as a DL4 in Fantasy Pro scoring with 28.4 fantasy points. Heads into week 10 as the DL21 according to Fantasy Pros UCR. It goes back, and I want to circle back to the tackle floor. And that's something that, you and I, we had discussed a couple of weeks ago regarding Bradley Chubb. And that I personally like when I'm trying to set my roster for defensive linemen, I want to find my edge rushers that have that tackle floor that can elevate my fantasy floor. And then any quarterback hits or TFLs or sacks, that's just icing on the cake on top of that. And Mafe's had it. I mean, he's the guy in Seattle with Chinanowoso out for the foreseeable future. And he's really turning it on.
Yeah. And then you throw in Leonard Williams into the mix, and all of a sudden now you have even more of an interior presence. You've got a good rotation of who he hasn't been as good as we expected with Darrell Taylor, but it's a good pass rush right now in Seattle, surprisingly so. So for people that are streaming defenses, I think against your Commanders, I think the Seattle defense could be a very nice streamable option, because what does Washington offensive line do really well? Nothing. They don't block a person. So there's a good chance that Maffei's going to make this 7 straight. There's a good chance that you're going to see Daryl or Darrell Taylor. Don't know how to say it. I should know that, but I don't. And there's a good chance that maybe Leonard Williams has an impact as well. And some of those guys, I would say, would be people that I would most likely play. And let's talk about plays, and let's talk about fades. If you haven't figured it out, plays and fades are people that we would play and people that we would fade. Now, it's a little bit more in depth than that. We try not to look at just the surface players and say, I'm going to play Danielle Hunter because he's really good. That doesn't really serve anybody's purpose. So we try to dig a little bit deeper. Some of those guys that might be in your waivers, some of the people that might be defensive linebacker, defensive backs, 2 or 3s that might be even more important, and kind of go from there. And so what I'll do is I will start off. We'll look at some defensive line play, and probably some of my favorite plays this week will be the entire defensive line for the Dallas Cowboys against the New York Giants. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. The Giants' offensive line is a revolving door of pressure allowed. Last week, we saw Evan Neal leave the game earlier. Evan Neal did not practice today. Tyree Phillips came in relief. We saw Max Crosby over on that left side, had a field day, 3 sacks. Our boy Tommy DeVito is in for, I've been trying. So forgive me, everybody. This is your opportunity, Craig and fellow friends, that if you have a Danny DeVito reference that would have fit into the Tommy DeVito getting murdered scenario that's going to happen, I'm all ears. But for that situation, I love the idea of DeMarcus Lawrence this week. It just makes sense. And for a person who I got to tell you, Jorge, what I have in front of me is a little startling from just how far DeMarcus Lawrence has fallen in the ECR rankings over at Fantasy Pros, like down at defensive line 62. And I gotta tell you, he's in my defensive line. Like he's a DL2, DL3 for me this week. And I think there's excellent value in that. On the flip side, who am I fading? And I gotta tell you, I was really optimistic, was hopeful, had my fingers crossed, was really trying to say positive on Harold Landry. And I think that I've just come to terms that he's just not ready quite yet. He showed some signs, but that ACL's really a 1.5 year injury. And I don't think this is the matchup to think this is the time. Luke Gedeke over on the right side, he gave up his first sack last week to Will Anderson. It's the first time that he's given up a sack since week 1. But I don't think he's the person to match, and try to assume he's going to be volatile or give up another sack in back-to-back games. This, to put it in perspective, Harold Landry posted his first 10% win rate this past week of the season. And that was against Pittsburgh, who is a bottom 10 team in pass blocking and efficiency. And so that should have been there, much higher than 10%. I'm out on, on Landry this week. Jamie was the other side of the Giants. Bad offense means more defense. So what's your thoughts on McFadden? I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention Micah McFadden. And when we talk about plays, or even he was going to be a money in Mirage, he was going to be in the news and notes. It was good. I couldn't find a way to get Micah McFadden because, man, from an efficiency standpoint, you talk about efficiency a lot, Jorge. And Micah McFadden is that guy when you need efficient workload because we haven't been seeing the consistent snaps week in and week out, but we saw that this past week, and how comfortable do you feel with him getting 80% of the snaps again? Let me ask you
that. Very, very comfortable. I think he will do it. Consistency. I think his floor is stable enough that, given the matchup, my only concern against Dallas, speaking of the matchup, is they don't run the damn ball. And so if you're hoping for him to be your run stopping guy, that's okay. And if anything, that kind of gives him a hit, if McFadden is, going to be playing more coverage, well, then maybe that's where the upside comes from. I would not say, if you're playing in a deep IDP league to drop Micah McFadden if he's on your roster. Because I think he'll have more good weeks than bad, but he's definitely, for me, more of a streaming linebacker option than somebody that I feel comfortable inserting as a starter week in and week out.
Yeah, and that's the problem is, here I ask you if you think he's going to, because I thought 80% of the snaps was right where he needs to be viable. The problem is viable and viability is probably as an LB4. Is about where I like it because I love his style in that defense. Ever since he was drafted, I like that because he was one of the best blitzing linebackers coming out of college. And I thought this is the perfect defense for him to be part of. He's going to be blitzing a ton. This should be an opportunity for him to really make him, his mark. And he kind of has. I mean, he has 38 pressure blitzes, pardon me. And 11 pressures on that. So he's valuable and capable when doing so. I don't know how much the Giants are going to blitz the Cowboys. We'll see. I get to feel that's going to be an ugly game. And
so I'm seeing Jamie blowing up our chat, which is awesome, asking all these IDP questions about McFadden, getting to Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, and all these players, basically, that you discussed have either been talked about by Nate in our IDP roundup that he puts out every week, or there's IDP starts and sits, or our waiver wire articles the past few weeks. We're gonna get there, I promise, Jamie. So just stay tuned for that.
Well, Jorge, tell us, what are you thinking at who plays and fades at linebacker?
All right, so since I mentioned Cole Holcomb and we're talking in the Pittsburgh linebacking situation, I'll tell you who I'm fading, and it's not Landon Roberts. And I know in the chat group we have with Hollywood and Gator Jay, it is very evident that you two are not fans of a Landon Roberts, or at least he hadn't been up until recently, potentially. But you look at his tackle efficiency; it's been super consistent, super high. His missed tackle rates have been low. His solo to assist ratio in the past 3 weeks has been stellar. On the flip side, Nate just decided to peace out because he's like, nope, can't do it, won't say anything nice about a Landon Roberts. You look on the flip side, you look at Quan Alexander, the past 3 games, 50% missed tackle rate, 33% missed tackle rate, 50% missed tackle rate. From an efficiency standpoint, again, I like efficiency and I like opportunity. And yes, snaps are going to be available with the Cole Holcomb injury. But, who has been more efficient with those snaps in recent weeks? It's been a Landon Roberts. So I don't like people who aren't good at their job and, are be given an opportunity to be better at their job more often than not versus somebody who has been playing very well and is also going to get equal opportunity in snaps. So, yeah, I'm fading Quan Alexander. And to answer your question, I do like Landon Roberts as a waiver wire pickup there, Jamie.
Well,
welcome back.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I fell asleep when you started talking about efficiency of 30% snaps. That was wow, riveting work. He doesn't play enough snaps for me. Quan Alexander they already gave him the green dot today. That's don't get me wrong. I don't.
He'll be good to eyeball when he's missing a tackle and Landon Roberts is
exactly. That's what it is. It's like the cursor they put on the hockey puck so fans can follow along. They'll want to know who's Landon missing today? And there's got to be a catchy song to that, I'm sure, about missed tackles. But we're not here to beat up on Landon Roberts or Quan Alexander or who, I mean, we are kind of, but
I'm kind of fading Quan Alexander. But let's go to the positive, shall we? Let's end linebacker to talk with positive. And this player was mentioned earlier by you. It was mentioned by Ruguru, I believe, in the chat. Back-to-back games with at least 5 solo tackles coming off of a strong performance for the Dallas Cowboys at linebacker, playing majority of snaps on first, second, and third downs. Talking about Marquese Bell. This linebacking tandem as a whole, Damone Clark and Marquese Bell, they've been playing really well. Both have pretty comparable tackle efficiency numbers the past few weeks. Solo to assist tackle numbers, double-digit tackles. They've had since week 6 a 0% missed tackle percentage, both of them. But what I like about Marquese Bell a little bit more than Damone Clark, especially this week, is the dual eligibility as a defensive back on Sleeper. For those who play on Sleeper, I need to double check that for ESPN, but on Sleeper he does have dual eligibility, and you're getting a high tackle floor with a high tackle efficiency with high tackle production as somebody that you can insert as your defensive back. For me, that's hands down for fantasy purposes, for giving advice for people playing on Sleeper. This is who you want to start as far as linebackers for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I'd say watching Marquese Bell has been phenomenal, and I was worried. My biggest concern with Bell was Rashaan Evans and what Rashaan Evans was going to mean to snap share, and we've seen that it hasn't meant much, and that's the most opportunistic situation going forward, is that he's not going to lose those snaps because he's proven, at least as far as what I've seen, is that he's capable in 3 different facets of the game. He's capable in run stopping, he's capable in pass coverage, and this is the area, kind of the intangible, is that he builds at like fire, because he does hit hard and he does lead by example. And I think that not that the Cowboys need someone else like that. They're already an established defense, but you know how that is. Even if you're extremely animated having something like that is even more incredible. So this is a good question for both of these two. Let's start with Jamie's from a waiver wire perspective, and it's a deep one coming off a bye week. He's got Kirby Joseph with the interception, or Tracy Walker with the sack coming off the bye week versus the Chargers. So Kirby Joseph or Tracy Walker? Oh, you have hit deep because that's the one thing I hate, trying to figure out Detroit secondary right now. And I, for the life of me, can't keep a good, I would say, grasp on what Dan Campbell feels the most comfortable with, or at least what the defensive coordinator does. What's your take? I mean, we know that it's Kirby Joseph played 100% of the snaps last game, and Tracy Walker played, 35 out of 46, so 87%.
So Walker's had a solid. Well, let me not say that because that'd be wrong. The past 3 games played, week 6, 7, and 8. The tackle for free safety, 6 tackles, 7 tackles, 6 tackles. He had a sack in week 8, which I don't really count that as a sticky stat for safety per se. But he's showing an upward trend in productivity as a whole. It's a tough one. It's I think for me, I would go with Walker, but I don't like it.
See, and I think I would go with Kirby Joseph, and I don't like that just because Kirby. I think that are the pass deflections an outlier? I mean, he's had multiple, and 2 of the last 3 games, like you talked on, against Tampa, Baltimore, and then again against Vegas. But I don't know if I love the one thing I figure out is from a matchup standpoint against the Chargers. Justin Herbert looks so bad this past week. It's such a shitty week to come off of because this is the rebound week for sure. But I'm going to go with I'm going to go with snaps and trust that Kirby Joseph's going to be the one that's going to get the most snaps there. Yuck is what I can say, and he's right.
All for that one, that's a gross question. So
this next one though, Rougarou, I believe it's hard for me just because I like both of these guys so much, and that's going to be Marquese Bell. Oh, sorry, Gator, my bad. Or Xavier McKinney. Go ahead.
For me, it's Bell. You're getting linebacker tackles for a defensive back. It's easy for me for that one.
I like McKinney, and we see that in certain weeks he's capable of putting up that defensive back one situation that both Hollywood and I last year were really high on McKinney for that result. Is the weeks like he had 10 tackles last week, which is similar to Bell, but nothing else on the board. That's just what McKinney had been known for doing, is having multiple pass defenses in a season. He had 11 in 2021, and then that's dropped to 5 and then 6. He had 5 interceptions. He's just not making the plays. So I'm right there with you. I'm going to go with Marquese Bell and hope that Rashaan Evans doesn't jump in and take any of the snaps. So at defensive back, I'll let you start with your play because number one, it's fun.
It is fun, and I really wish we had like an audio drop of this pronunciation of this name. But my guy this week is Mr. Rashaan Jenkins, Jacksonville Jaguar, Week 10 ECR defensive back 26. Since Week 6, he has played the most box snaps, aka closer to the line of scrimmage for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has plenty of opportunity to pad the stat sheet this week. Look, San Francisco. Shocker, they like to run the ball a lot. And you have this safety who's dynamic, who can help out and run support. He's one of their more efficient tacklers. It's just a great stat padding opportunity here for Rashaan Jenkins. And so for me, this was kind of like a no-brainer. Like, now the thing is what does that mean? The play here. Like I said, his ECR is already at defensive back 26. I think he stays just outside DB2, but I could see him being, meaning a defensive back 24, like at the 25, 26, I think is where his ranking is justified. But depending if this game gets away from Jacksonville pretty quickly, and I kind of think it does. I think San Francisco is going to keep Jacksonville off the field a lot, offense off the field a lot, especially with the the acquisition of Chase Young. And so just on the volume that the defense should, or the amount of time the amount of time that the defense for Jacksonville is going to be on the field, that's only going to boost Jenkins's upside as well.
Yep. Love Rashawn. Love the opportunity there. And then Cisco's injury here and there, it doesn't, it just, I don't know, takes, anytime you can take more playmakers out of the scenario, it's always a plus. And yes, Jamie, we don't talk offense, so that we didn't accidentally have any slip of the tongue where we would say the name Roschon Johnson, which we get plenty of Roschon Johnson talk over at Dynasty 365 and Fourth and Frames. Those two, many of love affairs with Roschon for sure. I would say this, our fade at defensive back had been a love affair of mine. Partially, it's starting to waver a little bit because there's another person who has drawn the eye of Robert Saleh and company as far as box snaps and overall just play, and it's Jordan Whitehead, who I love. Jordan Whitehead, I think from an IDP standpoint, more than happy to have had him, but unfortunately, as we pointed out over the past month now, it's pretty much been an even split in box snaps between him and Tony Adams. And what they're doing is cannibalizing each other's tackle volume. And we're seeing 5 total tackles per game average since week 6 as a direct result. I know it can change. The Raiders are good for maybe a big splash play to happen, which is a possibility. That is definitely a possibility. We could see very easily Aiden O'Connell chuck one up and Jordan Whitehead be in the right spot, but we're going for consistently recommended plays, and I don't think that he would fall into that. Correct, Jorge?
Yep, right, spot on. And it sucks because he started off the season so well, splash plays as well as having high tackle volume, and like you said, Tony Adams is just ate into his productivity, and his defensive back ACR right now is defensive back 31. I think he's in the 40s this week. I think that's going to be a lot lower this week against the Raiders, who allow, according to RPO Football, the 7th fewest total tackles per game to the safety position as a whole. So it's not looking good when you have both of those metrics not in your favor.
Yep, exactly. So one of the metrics that I know that we tabulate, look at, and format are pressure rates and hit rates and win rates, which leads to sack rates. And that is going to lead us to our sack lunch. Well, we pooped the bed last week. That's for sure. It was a bad one. You had you even in the 1 week too, you ruined Carl Granderson on not having a sack for a change. I went all in a defensive tackle for a person who had the bubble guts and still played, but definitely the flu or whatever he had, what kind of bug hurt Sebastian Joseph Day. And Hollywood went with somehow cursing Danielle Hunter and him not getting a sack. So that was there's 3 whiffs. We're out for week 9, but we're back into week 10. Jorge, you still have a half sack lead, 2 sack lead over Hollywood. I have a 1.5 sack lead over Hollywood. The sack lunch choices this week. I noticed that I don't see yours, Jorge. In the it's a surprise. I will not lead you on any further. I'm going with an easy one. I need to get back on the horse, and I'm going to ride this horse of Micah Parsons into the Giants offensive line and just watch him destroy. I hope that the Giants hold the ball or have the ball long enough for Micah Parsons to have 3 sacks. But I get the feeling that's only going to take about, 45 offensive plays for him to get that. So I'm pretty happy that I'm going to get multiple sacks out of Micah Parsons this week. Who are you going to go with? I'm excited.
So last week you took the gamble on Sebastian Joseph Day, and I give kudos to you for doing so.
Okay, hold on. Before you go any further, can I guess who you're going to take?
You can guess, absolutely.
I'm going to say you're going to take Osa Odigizua.
No.
Dang. Okay.
That was completely not at all where I was. But that I commend your. Okay, so maybe mine is not as obscure as I'm trying to draw comparisons to with last week. But I will say that I wrote about this guy over at our IDP waiver wire article the other day. He finished actually as the DL 11 with 17.5 points. He is basically third amongst edge rushers for the Baltimore Ravens in pass rushing snaps over the past 3 weeks. Yet he is still tied for the second most total pressures with 10 and leads the team in sacks since week 7. I'm going to say sack lunch. Kyle Van Noy gets another one this week.
Kyle Van Noy. I love it. That is definitely obscure. And I thought you were going to go with Justin Matabuke when you started talking about the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. So for me, he's okay. I should have. That would have been. So I'm really high on this guy, Justin Matabuke. I think he is in even non-defensive tackle, just pure DL leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a must start.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, he's him and Boye Mafe with their little streaks that they're on with sacks is very impressive for some names that, that's what you get. Come to Shoot the Gap, listen in, and you get names like Boye Mafe, Justin Matabuke, Osa Odigizua, Tuli Tuapalatu, etc. Which
he played really well the other night, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was really mad that I didn't pick him over Sebastian Joseph Day. I went back and forth, and yeah. How about Jermaine Pratt going forward? Steep again. He has been playing a lot of snap counts. So I actually don't mind Jermaine Pratt. The one thing, Jorge, and you can kind of testify to this a little bit, when you're going against the Houston Texans and if they pass the ball that much, I don't believe that they have a ton of time if both Hendrickson and Hubbard, which for me means more more funneled passes to the middle, which I think does help Jermaine Pratt, right?
Yeah, Jermaine Pratt for me is really approaching rest of season of LB2 as somebody that I would want as my second linebacker, starting linebacker for IDP purposes. He's just super reliable, super consistent, decent tackle efficiency. The snaps are there with him and Logan Wilson. So even if it's against a pass heavy offense or a stout, run conservative offense, he's a set it, forget it for me.
Yeah. And if you look at the matchup against Houston, going back to week 1, opposing linebackers in week 1, multiple 20-point scores at linebacker. Week 2, the same thing, 2 20-point linebackers, or 2. Let's put it this way: 2 LB2 finishes or top 24. Week 2, 2 top 24. Week 3, a top 12. Week 4, top 20. Week 5, top 24. Week 6, top 20. Week 7, top 10. Week 8, 2 top 12s. So, I mean, they constantly produce just stud linebacker situations going forward. So that is, Kyle Van Noy's on my wire. I already have Roquan. Is it worth the pickup? Do you mind going linebacker and edge rusher on the same team?
Nope. I don't. If they're both good at what they do. If I'm desperate at defense, okay. First thing, if I'm putting him just as a strict linebacker, I would not. Now, if on your platform he has that LBDL eligibility, and I can slide him into my defensive lineman spot, then absolutely, I have no issues with having Van Noy and Roquan. But for me, if he's only linebacker, only eligible, I want somebody with a higher tackle floor.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. And in the chat, Dylan, we see you there. If you never get the wrong live, you're at the right spot if you want to talk about some defense. But yeah, please send any of your questions over to us in the DMs. Put it in the chat. We'll answer those for you, man. We don't want you to ever feel left out. That's for sure.
So, and he has in the chat, it's not answering fantasy. No, we're answering IDP fantasy questions.
Yes, just not the ones that.
Yeah, not the ones you're looking for, but we're not the droids you're looking for this time.
That's good. I was going to do the same thing.
Thank you. Well, that's great minds think alike. What can I say?
You can say for Jorge or for Nate, I'm Jorge, and see you next week. You can say any of those outros you want. I would say tune in tomorrow night to watch the mailbag show, and then Sunday morning for the pregame show, and get all your questions answered by any of the plethora of Fantasy and Frames family members that are happy to answer your questions over at fantasyandframes.com or on the old Twitter machine. So for Jorge, I'm Nate, Gator J behind the scenes. As always, we'll see you next week.